And after news of Honda shutting down Japanese factory some days back, its rival Toyota is planning to halve the number of cars it sells in Japan to about 30 by 2025 to focus on more popular models in a shrinking market. Automaker currently sells about 62 car models in Japan, and including the Prius gasoline hybrid and the Aqua compact hatchback, along with less popular ones including Premium sedan. Auto sales in Japan have been falling as the population rapidly ages, while young people are losing interest in car ownership. The plans will allow Toyota to make better use of its resources. Toyota and other global car makers are concentrating their efforts on developing lower emission vehicles, including electric cars, while also focusing on expanding market in emerging markets. And after Google facing an antitrust fine in European Union, it is the turn of another tech giant facing antitrust fine in a different part of the world. The global chip maker Qualcomm is facing an antitrust fine in Taiwan. A Taiwanese commission has accused Qualcomm of having a monopoly over chip market for several so-called modern technologies, which provide wireless data connectivity for mobile phones, and refused to license its technology to other industry players. In Taiwan, Qualcomm is required to submit a progress report on the matter every 6 months to the Commission on negotiations with linked parties. However, in a statement, Qualcomm said it disagreed with the decision. Now, once the final decision is issued in the coming weeks, Qualcomm said it will challenge decision in court. Taiwanese decision is the latest challenge to Qualcomm's business model, which involves selling chips and also licensing a suite of patents linked to how those chips are put into a phone to provide mobile data to the device. Now, while the regulatory and legal tracks differ in some details, a key theme is that the allegation Qualcomm uses its dominant position in the market for modem chips to charge unfair royalty patents for its parent company. And Samsung Electronics Vice Chairman Lee arrived at the High Court in Seoul for the first hearing of his appeal case against a 5-year jail term for corruption. A lower court last month convicted 49-year-old Lee, heir to the Samsung Group and one of Asia's largest technology companies, of bribing former President Park Geun-hye to help strengthen Lee's control of the crown jewel in the conglomerate Samsung. Park is also under trial over allegations of abuse of power and bribery. Former Samsung executives, including former head of Corporate Strategy Office Choi Gi-sung and former President Chang Chung-ki, also arrived at court for their appeal. They were, along with Lee, also convicted in the lower court in the bribery case. Since Lee filed for appeal late last month, the appellate court is likely to try to rule by next January. As under Korean law, he can only be kept in detention a maximum of 4 months while the court considers his appeal. And news from India-Japan partnerships, where India would send 1 lakh youth to Japan as part of bilateral technical training program with an aim to boost national productivity. The Indian recruits will receive training in Japan for a period of 3 to 5 years. They will get accommodation and job opportunities in Japan too. The training will be imparted in 3 to 5 years as part of government's skill development program. Japan will bear the financial cost of skill training of Indian technical interns. About 50,000 of them may also get jobs in Japan, and the selection of the youth will be done in a transparent manner according to Japanese requirements. And coming to India news, driven by demand in festival season and response to new models, India-based Hero MotoCorp has sold a record over 20 lakh units in the July-September quarter. In September, the company had set another record by becoming the only two-wheeler company to sell over 7 lakh units in a month. So record two-wheeler sales in festival season, Hero Moto has sold over 20 lakh units. Record sales have been driven by demand in festival season mainly, and Hero Moto has already surpassed 75 million units in sales. India's Hero Moto is world's largest two-wheeler maker as well. Hero sales have been driven by demand for company's various brands including Splendor, Glamour, Passion and HF Deluxe motorcycles as well as the Duet, Maestro, Edge and Pleasure scooters. Hero also reported sales of over 1 million units in the ongoing festival season. Hero MotoCorp has already surpassed 75 million units in cumulative sales since its inception. And US state of California could become the first state that allows driverless or autonomous vehicles on its roads. The California DMV, which is the government authority, is almost ready to allow autonomous vehicles on the state's public roads without a human test driver behind the wheel. The state's regulator released a set of proposed revisions to its policies that, once passed, will also grant public permission to use self-driving cars. The new rules are now subject to a 15-day public comment period, which closes on October 25. The DMV's proposals will have to conform to new federal regulations for driverless cars, which cleared through a Senate panel earlier this month, and await a vote after passing in the House in September. The move marks a shift in self-driving car testing. Test vehicles laden with sensors have collected road data on California's streets for a few years now, but there has always been a human operator ready to take control in case the computer system controlling the car failed. Now, if a company wanted to test out its platform Sense Driver, it wouldn't be allowed on public road. And back to India news, where in signs of mounting worries for Indian financial sector, country's bad loans have hit a record high of around 10 lakh crore rupees at the end of June this year. Now, according to latest data available World Bank, non-performing loans, India's loan defaults were at staggering 9.2% of total gross loans in 2016, second highest in Asia after Pakistan. So India's bad debt loan mess is continuing. The bad debt loans are at a record high now. The record high is at $146 billion as far as India's bad debts are concerned. Power, steel, road, infra and textiles are the biggest loan defaulters. And India loan defaults are at 9.2% of gross loans in 2016. While India loans defaults are at second highest in Asia after Pakistan. India had just 2.67% of bad loans in 2011. And Pakistan's bad loans stood at 11.3%, but India was a bit better than Pakistan. A loan becomes non-performing or bad when a borrower stops repaying either the principal amount or the interest. In India, power, steel, road, infrastructure and textile sectors are the biggest loan defaulters of state-owned banks. Also, India's bad loans have surged drastically in the past 6 years. In 2011, India had just 2.67% of bad loans, which surged to 5.88% in 2015. The sharpest rise came in 2016 when the bad loans shot up to 9.18%. The main contributors for India's bad debt mess are slower revenue growth and higher interest rates, leading to bad debts piling up at banks. Now, according to RBI's data, new loans grew at just about 5% in the year to March, the lowest growth rate in more than 6 decades. Now, several banks have already cut back their loan books to conserve capital. Fitch Ratings estimates Indian banks will need $65 billion of additional capital by March 2019 to meet Basel III global banking rules. And Indian Finance Minister Arun Jaitley is on a week-long visit to the US. Jaitley will be attending the IMF, which is International Monetary Fund, and World Bank annual meetings today. While these agencies had issued warnings for Indian economy yesterday, all eyes will be on this meet as this comes after a series of bad news on the Indian economy. IMF had recently slashed economic growth forecast by 50 basis points. Even World Bank report on South Asia released cited India's economic slowdown. The World Bank has projected India's GDP growth will slow down to 7% this year. But Jaitley remains optimistic. In his address to Columbia University, he said, A series of reforms like demonetization and goods and services tax had put the economy back on track, and it is on a much stronger note now. Moving to UK, where UK's Prime Minister Theresa May said Britain was not ramping up for a no deal in Brexit talks with the European Union. PM May added that she was prepared for every eventuality following UK's exit by March 2019. Now, addressing the Parliament's weekly Prime Minister's questions session, Prime Minister May was attacked by Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn for leading the country to chaos. Prime Minister May also announced $330 million Brexit contingency plan.
If there is no deal, then obviously we will have to have arrangements with other member states about not just EU citizens here, but about UK citizens in those member states. We are preparing for every eventuality. We are committing money to prepare for Brexit, including a no-deal scenario.
And PM's statement comes hours after UK Finance Minister Philip Hammond said the value of possible Brexit deal would decline rapidly if the negotiations would be dragged into next year. Meanwhile, Germany has warned that Britain will suffer more than the remaining European Union members when it leaves the bloc.
Was den Brexit anbelangt, gibt es ja verschiedene Untersuchungen, dass Europa eher ein Gewinner sein wird. Wir haben in Deutschland schon zahlreiche Firmenverlagerungen zur Kenntnis genommen von Unternehmen, die aus Großbritannien ihren Hauptsitz nach Deutschland verlegt haben, sodass ich davon ausgehe, dass wir selbstverständlich Probleme haben werden im Handel, weil es ja da doch ausgefeilte Produktionslinien gibt. Das wird schon so sein, aber es ist nach diesen Institutsmeinungen wenigstens, wird es für Europa nicht ganz so schwer werden, wie es wohl für Großbritannien werden wird.
And earlier on Tuesday, European Union President Donald Tusk has issued a stern warning to Britain, saying bloc may rethink whether a Brexit deal is possible if there is no progress towards trade talks by December. And Britain and European Union will hold the fifth round of Brexit divorce negotiations later this week. European Union insists on the progress of Britain's Brexit and the rights of 3 million citizens living in the UK. And in signs of major troubles for global MNCs, Boeing, Toyota and Nissan and other big companies, they are scrambling to check the safety of their products after it emerged that they had been supplied with falsely certified metal from Kobe Steel in a deepening scandal that has dealt a fresh blow to confidence in industrial quality controls in Japan. The scandal is the latest in a string of scandals highlighting wider concerns about inspection and quality control in Japan, from wobbly building plings at the construction arm of Asahi Kasei to overstated fuel economy at Mitsubishi Motors. The Kobe Steel news came just days after Japanese carmaker Nissan was forced to recall about 1.2 million vehicles that were inspected by unauthorized technicians. Other companies affected by Kobe Steel scandal include Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, Kawasaki Heavy Industries, Honda, Mazda and Subaru. Kobe Steel said it had no evidence of any safety concerns as a result of fraudulent certification. And South Korean electronic giant and largest maker of memory chips in the world, Samsung Electronics, is expected to forecast a record third quarter profit on Friday, thanks to the strong market for memory chips. So Samsung is moving towards a path to profitability. Samsung expects third quarter profit boost, and profit will jump on demand for memory chips. Mobile earnings will bounce also back from last year. And brisk sales of Galaxy Note 8 smartphone will boost profits of Samsung as well. The mobile earnings are also bouncing back from last year's withdrawal of Note 7 that proved costly for Samsung. World's biggest maker of memory chips and mobile phone, Samsung has been the chief beneficiary of booming semiconductor market as mobile devices and servers demand ever greater processing power. Analysts say the brisk sales of latest Galaxy Note 8 smartphone launched in mid-September, also are likely to further boost its performance. Samsung profits will boost on strong global demand for DRAM chips that will continue to outpace supply in 2018, while demand for NAND or NAND flash chips exceeded supply for 6 straight quarters as of last month. Back to India, where as India, the world's third biggest oil consumer, aims to cut imports, it wants to attract foreign investors to $300 billion worth of energy projects planned for the next decade. India imports about 80% of its oil needs, which Prime Minister Modi wants to reduce to 67% by 2020. The planned projects will include increasing country's refining capacity, oil and gas block exploration, and developing gas infrastructure, including for transporting LNG and regasification. PM Modi on Monday met chiefs of various energy companies from India and abroad. India's oil and gas output has been stagnant for years, while its fuel demand has risen with economic expansion, hitting federal finances with an import bill worth billions of dollars. Modi's government has been taking steps to unlock country's vast energy reserves and boost foreign investment in the sector, and has relaxed rules as well, including on pricing and marketing. Now encouraged by reforms, BP and Reliance Industries this month announced a plan to invest $6 billion to revive a deep-water gas field off the country's east coast. And let's talk about the global markets now. Asian markets were near a decade high today, riding bull run in global equity markets, while the dollar sagged after Federal Reserve showed a guarded view towards inflation. Now, Japan's Nikkei was up 0.5% after brushing 20,980.92, its highest since December 1996. South Korea's Kospi also added 0.2% to mark a fresh record peak, and Hong Kong's Hang Seng scaled a decade high before dipping 0.05%. Now, Asia took cues from Wall Street, where major indexes rose to yet another set of record closing highs overnight, following a report that a market-friendly candidate was being pushed as successor to Janet Yellen, the helm of the Fed. Now, broader investor risk sentiment has improved this week after Catalonia dialed back plans to break away from Spain, with MSCI's 47-country World Stock Index reaching a record high. Now, global equities now appear to be taking geopolitical developments such as successionist push in Spain and tensions in the Korean Peninsula in their stride to reach those record tops. Fed policymakers had a prolonged debate about prospects of a pickup in inflation and the path of future interest rate rises. If it did not, the minute showed. And we are joined on this by our analyst for today, Mr. Vivek Karwa from Chennai. Good morning to you. Good morning to you, Mr. Karwa. First of all, Asian markets are at a decade high. And so how do you see this continuing? Will this continue? What's your assessment over there?
Good morning, Sumit. The sentiment overall across the world seems positive. Of course, you already mentioned the reason behind the US rally and the Europe Spain thing. So what is happening is there are no negatives as such, first thing. And the second reason is that the economies world over are in fact growing. There was a report by IMF, it was released just 2 days back, which shows that yes, the world economies are recovering, and even India, they are predicted around 6.7 for this year, but again 7.4 for 2018. So that is keeping market positive, and the sentiment remains positive, plus the liquidity globally. So India markets also are saving huge liquidity, and the global markets, same case with them also. So markets are bullish still, and I feel the bias remains upwards. If you look at the valuations, yes, there are pockets of sectors wherein the valuations are actually costly within India also, and I'm a bit, say, cautious on the financials, which have already run up a lot, and around 38% of the indexes are today's date financials. So I'm afraid, like what happened in pharma last year and this year, similar thing could repeat in financials maybe over next 18 months or 2 years. But overall, markets remain positive, and yes, we would see sharp corrections now and then, but that those corrections would be used for buying. Same thing happened yesterday also. Yesterday also market was almost like Sensex was 150 to 200 points up, and then went down almost 150 negative and then closed 90 points negative. So similar thing is possible, but the bias remains upwards.
Also, Mr. Karwa, if we ask you about Indian markets, over there yesterday there was a lot of warnings that came up. World Bank issued a warning. IMF also said Indian economy could slow down. How do you see these pressures, though they haven't impacted markets much going forward? What do you think these overall warnings, how will they bode well for Indian markets?
As I just said, the warning is for this year, Sumit. Now, what IMF has done is, though the expectation of 2018 next year is again positive. So what is happening is people thought that this continue as such negatively, but no. It could be GST or it could be demonetization or it could be other reasons also. We have huge banking NPA issues, overall slowdown in the economy. So that is one reason for this year's slowdown. But the sentiment still remains positive, and IMF themselves have given 7.4 prediction for next year. So this is just an aberration, a one-year phenomenon. I think next year we would be up again.
All right, thank you, Mr. Karwa, for giving time to us and giving us all these important perspectives and details as far as Indian markets and global markets are concerned. So global markets are at a decade high. That's a good news coming for, we can say that, the equities markets globally.
WION Wallet.